And then today we're talking about starting your own business. So the real path to running a creative business. I'm Aaron Day. I'm a co-organizer of the Boise Graphic Design Group, but I'm also the founder and project manager, one of the project managers at Whitewell Web. So who is this for? This is for designers, developers, UXers, branders, marketers, photographers, videographers, anyone that's like in the creative space, creative professional that's looking to start their own business. What this isn't hype. This isn't, hey, you need to quit your job tomorrow and start your own business. This is more of a talk about how do you make a business a sustainable business. So I'm going to first talk about my journey, dream versus reality, freelancer versus agency, just to kind of define those, the nuts and bolts of actually starting a business, money and scaling your business, getting work and setting boundaries, creating systems, getting into the community, the lessons I've learned, and then what's next for you guys. So let's start off with my journey. And this was kind of interesting because when I was putting together like this presentation, I didn't remember that I had that many years behind me. So my first business I started was 23 years ago. I've had 6 different web design businesses, and that journey has kind of taken me like all over the place. And so I had a lot more stories that I'm probably not going to share ever, but we'll cover like the main ground here. So I actually started out at Idaho State University. I was a fine art major. I switched very quickly into programming because I realized that with my level of skill with art, I was good, but I was probably going to be an art teacher, which is not where I wanted to end up. So I went into programming. My first job was a mainframe programmer at Farm Bureau in Idaho. And then I looked at Pocatello. I was like, well, maybe it's time to move. I'm going to move up to Seattle and get a job at Microsoft. And so it was just kind of this dream. And I actually did go up to, moved up to Seattle, just moved. And within like 2 weeks, I had a job at Microsoft. I got in with just like a temp job. It turned into a less temporary job. And then finally I had like a 1-year gig at Microsoft. And so Microsoft is kind of a weird beast because they've been involved in so many different legal issues over the years with how they use contractors versus employees that you can only work as a contractor for 1 year, and then you have to take a 100-day break. And so I was having a whole lot of fun. I was doing all this networking stuff, building like, I had 4 server racks that were mine. I built all these machines. I'd send them out for like different like Comdex shows across like the world. And so I got really good at that. And how I leveled my game up was that's where I created my first professional website. So I made a website to basically manage all these computers in our little computer lab. And so I got so into that when my 1 year came up and I had to do this 100-day break, I said, well, hell, I ought to just like try this whole web design business as a job. And so that's where I started my first web design business. And so I started this company right here, NetSprout Design. This is our business card. I still have this up just to like kind of remember, where I came from. As you can see, like this is what we offered. And so I started this business with my cousin, Aria. And so she was the design side of it. I was the tech side of it. And so we probably worked on about 6 or 7 projects. And then we got into it and we were good and we were growing. But then the reality came and, she wasn't able to like quit her job. And so we couldn't grow this business. And so then what happened was like she decided to like focus on her job more. And then I spun off and actually went full freelance just under my name. And so then I went freelance. I started actually going through like the multimedia program at the University of Washington. And then that's where I met like the vice president of this custom development shop called Peak Systems. And so I ended up actually working at this company, Peak Systems in Seattle, for a little while. And then life just kind of happened. And I was like, well, it's time to move back to Idaho. I'm kind of tired of Seattle because I was getting into like that kind of frame where it's just like, what am I doing with the rest of my life? Do I want to live in Seattle or do I want to live in Idaho, which is like closer to my family. So then I moved to Idaho, and I started up ABD Insights. And as you can see, like all my business cards here. And so I still kept that relationship with Peak Systems though. And so I was still doing work for them. And that was like really cool because we started doing neater and neater, projects. And so I was doing work for, Quest, which later became CenturyLink, for DirecTV, a little bit for Microsoft still, also for Verizon Wireless. And at this time, I was also going to college. And so I finished up at Boise State. And then ABD Insights ended up actually getting like a lot bigger. Hired my first actual employee. This was over at the Union Block. And then Peak Systems came back and they're like, well, how about if we just buy your company and we open up a branch here in Boise, and that'll be like the Idaho branch of Peak Systems. Like, yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. And it was a lot of fun. And so we actually turned into like this multimedia, like little studio. And so it was myself, the guy that was previously working under ABD Insights, and 3 other people. And we just had like all these like phones that were constantly being shipped to like our office. We'd photograph them, video them, and create like these immersive like multimedia experiences using Flash. You guys remember Flash? Yeah, so Flash was my favorite thing, probably is one of my favorite things still, but it's no longer a thing. And so we made all sorts of just fun stuff. But then after a while, Quest got bought out by CenturyLink, and then right after that, Apple did its things with Flash, killed it. I still blame Apple for it. And so then we kind of had to restructure like the work that we were doing. And I started doing like more corporate stuff under Peak Systems because they're a very enterprise type of client. And so it wasn't as fun anymore. And so that's where I quit working over at Peak Systems and started another business. And so I went from the lead in Boise to starting my next business. And you can tell here, I just grabbed like the same logo and just renamed it. So at this point, Peak Systems owned this name, and so I couldn't touch it. But they can't take ABD because that's my initials. And so I was able to just start a new business, and I moved into the Alaska Center, in the main floor, and started all over again. So it just I couldn't bring any clients over, but I had enough reputation where it's like I was able to find clients like both here locally, but then also in the Salt Lake area. And so I was able to grow pretty quickly again. Pretty soon I had like 3 employees. And then I started working with this guy, Josh, over at Thrive Web Designs. And so we did work back and forth. And I would send him, like, hey, I need some design work. And he'd be like, well, I need custom development work. And so we did that for about a year. And then we're like, well, why don't we just join forces? And so then we formed a new Thrive Web Designs. And we started really to grow. And so this is where we had 7 different employees, and we built our portfolio up to 500 plus active clients, and we were like #1 for Boise web design. And so that was like really cool. We got the attention of an SEO company here in town, and sold the company. And so that was awesome to begin with. But then as we got into it, I became like the CTO of the SEO company. But then the boss pulled me into the office and was like, Aaron, I really don't get this whole programming thing. Is it okay if I let your programmers go and we just don't do programming and we can just repurpose what you're doing? And he's like, or how about if you just take those guys and you just start your own business? And so that's exactly what I did. This is a great suggestion. And, I thought for maybe a second, should I do this? Yes. And so made that decision. Had to walk away from probably about 2/3 of the payout that I got from selling the company because it was within 6 months. But it was a really good choice. So that's where I started White Wall Web. And that's the origin story of it. But I actually had this logo already partially designed. I had the domain name. I had the starts of it. I had it already kind of built 10 years beforehand. And so it had just been sitting up on the shelf. So I was able to dust it off, and then just run with it. So my path was kind of like build, grow, big disruption, adapt, and then start all over again. That's not the best way to run a business. It's probably better to be like a little bit more linear. Start off as a freelance, build it up into something bigger, and then have like your own agency. But we'll get into that. So it's not one decision, it's a series of them. So starting a business, it's not just about launching it, it's about progressively, working on it. So direction, structure, clients, people, standards. And that's what the rest of this talk is going to be about. So let's start off with the dream versus the reality. Because starting your own business, it sounds so cool. There's like the promise of flexibility, working from home. You don't have to commute. You can choose your own projects. You're your own boss. Higher income potential if you do it right. Tax advantages. So there's a lot of great things for starting like your own business, but there's also the harsh reality because it's more work, it's more responsibility. There's that volatility, the ebb and flow of a business. And so like as a freelancer, a lot of times what you'll see is like, oh, I got way too much work. It's just totally swamped. And then like the next month, you have nothing. It's crickets, and so then you're scrambling. Oh, I got to do some marketing. I got to get the word out there. I got to like post on LinkedIn, and so if you set it up right and you get those connections, you can even that out. But there is that volatility a lot of times with like owning your own business. And then the taxes, no one tells you this. So when you run your own business, it's like you have to pay self-employment taxes, and if you have employees, it's snowing again. What the hell? And then if you have employees, then you're also having to pay the employer portion of their taxes. And so you got like federal income, that's all paid by the employee. But then you have FICA, which is Medicare and Social Security. And so that's an extra, 7.65%? And so as an employer, you pay 7.65%, and then the employee pays 7.65%. If you run your own business as a freelancer, you're paying both sides of that. So it gets to be a lot, and if you aren't expecting it, it'll bite you in the ass. Then there's also the legal risk. As an employee, you work on projects, and if you mess up, the company takes care of it. When you own the company, if there's a mess up, if it's you, if it's your employees, doesn't matter. It's you. So they're coming after you. So all of this, there's a lot of responsibility, especially once you start getting employees. More freedom equals more responsibility. So as a business owner, you get these benefits here. So more freedom with more potential income, you get more flexibility, possibly you get more control because this is your baby. Like you are actually building something. You're building your brand, you're building like the reputation, you're building something that hopefully will endure, past yourself. But then there's also more responsibility. So you got a lot more risk. There's more structure. That structure has to be built in, or else you're just going to be working all the time. There's more people depending on you once you have employees, and even as a freelancer, if you have a family, then everyone's depending on you. And naturally, with all of this, there's more pressure. So let's talk about the difference between a freelancer and an agency. And I'm kind of throwing a studio into agency as well because it's kind of in between. And I don't want to cover too many different things. So freelancer, there's low overhead. And this is like the easiest entry point, because as a freelancer, you can just pick this up on your weekends, after work. It can be like, okay, I want to design a logo for, a small business, or it can be a video gig or a photography gig, because we have a couple guys in the office where they have side gigs. And so as soon as they're off work, they're off doing that. And so as a freelancer, you're able to just jump right into it. You don't have to do the whole formal structure of an LLC or, all that extra work. You can just basically just do it under your name. But then there's a limited capacity because it's really just limited to like how many hours you have available. So as a freelancer, if you're doing it like after your regular job, then how much time do you have like left in the week? Maybe 20 hours? If you're really pushing it, probably closer to like 6. But then also if you quit your day job and you focus just on freelance, how much do you want to work? 40, 50, 60, 30? Like I work with a couple of freelancers where their sweet spot is 25 hours a week, and that's great. It's like, I wouldn't be able to live off that, but, and then on the agency side, that's a whole different animal. So you're not just selling your time, you're building a machine. So you're building like so you're getting like this leverage from your team, both on like the extra manpower, but also on expertise. So you're basically like having like a larger breadth of knowledge. You have like this stable of different skill sets and different like expertise and experience. But there's a higher overhead, and so if you have an actual physical location, then you're also paying for an office as well, and the desks and the computers, and maybe there's subscriptions and advertising as well. So there's a lot more overhead with that. And then one thing you have to accept as an agency, if you're the business owner, you have to stop doing like the actual work that brought you into that industry in the first place. So like for me, I love doing design. I love doing programming. I love them both. But how much do I actually get to do these days? Maybe 5 hours an entire week. It doesn't happen. I'm more in like the business strategy side of things and project management. And so you just have to accept that you have to get more into like that leadership role. And as part of that, there's more responsibility. And so just to kind of like talk about that difference between a freelancer and an agency from the client's perspective, they're basically seeing the freelancer is just another part of the team. They can usually pick up a freelancer for cheaper than they could like an agency. But on the agency side, it's like there's more peace of mind. It's more stable, covered, and cost effective. But then there's all the expertise too, because a client might hire an agency because everything is under that one roof, versus that freelancer that can only just do, maybe just design, maybe just programming, maybe just marketing. So and there's not like a right answer to this. I mean, it's basically just whatever works best for that client, and also what works best for you as the business owner. Because as a business owner, as a freelancer, you bring your skill, your time, and your relationships. As an agency, you have proven systems, a diverse team, and more capacity. And I hope these images are good. Like some of them I just had fun with, and some are just like more literal. And my daughter actually jumped in and helped me too. So she's 15, and she was just like, "Oh, that image sucks." So she picked a couple of these, and a couple of them. I wanted to put a couple dad jokes in here, and she stopped me. So, probably for the best. Let's get into the nuts and bolts. So the direction. So I want to like back up a couple of months. So there's this guy that was speaking in here a couple months ago. He was talking about finding your true north. That's what we're talking about here. So you want to like, before you even like start a business, figure out what direction that you want to go in. Find out what resonates with you, and then find your ideal client. Is that opening? Perfect. Hello. Nope. So when you first start off your business, it's okay if you don't know who your ideal client is. I mean, you probably need to like get work to, pay for the bills. So take on that work, You'll get that exposure with different industries, different types of people, and then you'll find out who your ideal client is. Once you find out who your ideal client is, let's say like maybe you really like working with government entities, or maybe it's just like a certain personality type that you like to work with. Then you can like cater your offering to that ideal client, and you have a higher chance of like bringing in those projects. And you'll still bring in you'll still bring in other projects, but your focus is on that ideal client and that target audience. And all of this, really goes into like what is your long-term vision for the company? Like, where do you see yourself in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? This is where my logo started from. So this is the next part. Come up with like the business name. So it can be whimsical, it can be like serious, it can just be completely boring. It can just be your name. Like I started out with ABD Insights, just my initials. I went with White Whale just because of that whole metaphor with Moby Dick and finding like your white whale. But it's also a trick that I tell other people. If you can't come up with a business name, pick a color, pick an animal or a robot, and stick them together, and you got like something that you can actually like people can sink their teeth into. And I've actually had like two friends that have, not you, but I had two friends that have actually like have followed this and started their own business with that. It's just something I noticed like early on. So my designer Randy, he sat down, like I think 13 years ago, and just sketched all this out for like the previous go that we were going to do with White Whale Web. And so I sat on this for seriously like 10 years. And so I'm so glad I didn't throw this away. So he had like sent this to me, and I just kind of stored it away, like maybe someday I'll use this. And then pulled it back up, and I called him up. I was like, Randy, it's down to this one, and I think I did like is this one. And then obviously that's the one that we actually ended with. But as you guys start your business, you don't need a logo to start off with. I mean, that can be kind of distracting. You need to start a business. You need to like work on the strategy of why you're doing it. So don't get hung up on it. Just put together like a load mark. Just put together like a word mark. So if I started off with just this, I could have easily started the business with just that. I was just lucky because I already had like a head start. So structure. So there's a lot of different ways that you can set up the business, but really it's these two. So a sole proprietorship, you can set it up real easy, and it's actually already kind of built in. So if you wanted to just start doing work and building a logo for someone, if you do it under your name, then you can already just start working on it. And so your taxes are easy because it's just part of your 1040. You don't have to do anything extra. Where you start having to do a little extra work is, let's say if you want to keep the sole proprietorship, and so any money that you get just goes to your household, and you want like a different name, then you just have to run down to the state of Idaho and fill out an assumed business name form, and I think it's like $30 or something. So it's like pretty cheap, and then you're good to go. But if you're going to be doing, I would say probably like a threshold, like at least 10 hours a month, that's the point where you should probably set up an LLC. So an LLC is limited liability company, and just like the name suggests, it gives you some protection from getting sued. So hopefully no one ever gets in that situation. So I've been running businesses for 23 years now, and knock on wood, I have not been sued yet. I've been threatened twice, and both times it was poppycock, and after I put all the facts on the table, it just disappeared. But I'm lucky so far, because it's like sometimes it's just the stupidest things. I saw one designer where they had like created a logo that was similar to a copyrighted logo. And I honestly don't think that they had actually even seen the logo. It just happened to be close to it. But they actually got sued for copyright infringement. And that's where the insurance like had to jump in and help out a little bit. That's how it goes sometimes. Sometimes it's like you just cannot control it, and that's one of the risks with running a business. So an LLC will give you like all sorts of like tax benefits as well, and there's also some benefits that you can get as far as like setting yourself up as an employee and getting like employee benefits too. So like 401k, health benefits, vision, all that good stuff. And then there's other structures as well. So partnership, limited liability, partnership, S Corp, C Corp. So there's a couple other things, but really it's like most of us are gonna like be either one of these. And then step by step for actually setting up an LLC. So head out to the Secretary of, head out to the SOS site, and there's a form out there called the Articles of Incorporation. Just do a search for it, and it's $100, and it's real easy to set up. You can just do it online and submit it. And then go out to the IRS site. They have a 10-minute form, and you're done. And then if you're an LLC, you get 2 options. So better get some water. So you have 2 options by default. If you're a single person, like as a freelancer, let's say, you'll automatically do taxes as a sole owner LLC. You don't want to do that. You don't get the tax benefits by doing that. So you fill out this forms. It's the 2253. While you're on the IRS site, just do this one too. It's pretty quick, and you can just send it in, and after a while you'll get like I think that one is not electronic. I think that's one that you send in and you get a letter. And then you want to open up your business account. And so if you already have like your favorite banking establishment, bank or credit union, you can keep with that. Or if you want to, or if you're looking for a change in your bank, a lot of times it's good to have just to have them separate. You can either go out to Google or go out to NerdWallet, and there's always deals for setting up like a new business account. And a lot of times you can get like a $400 or $500 bonus just for like setting up an account. And if you're just starting your business off, that's a nice little start. It helps out. It all helps out. And then on contracts and insurance, so on the contract side of things, the main contract that you need is a project agreement. And so this is that agreement that you have between the client and yourself. So what you're going to provide, so all your creative, goods, and what they're going to provide, money, and then how long is this all going to take? And so you want to make that as airtight as possible. There are other contracts that you probably need too, like an NDA, maybe like a contractor agreement, if you're going to like hire, other contractors. So if you go out to Google, just search for it. AI might do an all right job with that. But what I've done in the past is I just sign up for Rocket Lawyer. It's a $40 a month plan. You can custom make all your own forms, all your own contracts, and then you just cancel after that first month. You're done. Yeah. So I mean, it's a great deal. Yeah. And then on the insurance side, I forget which one. Because there's one that you absolutely need, and then there's another one that you probably should do. So commercial general liability is the one that you need to have, and generally you want to get like $1 million policy for that. And then the other one, especially if it's anything that is kind of is a lot more creative, you can't like have like very specific like requirements on. That's where you want personal liability insurance as well. So for our company, we do a lot of work with the state of Idaho. I have to carry like 5 different insurance policies, and 2 of them are for $5 million. It is like, talk about overhead. It's a little bit too much, but that's the only way that I can do work with the state. So shop around, because if it's just general liability, or if it's commercial general liability, pretty much like everyone offers it, and you can shop around and find like the best deal. This is actually a video walking through all those steps, and I already put it out onto our YouTube channel. So if you want to just have like a little reference. There you go. That's weird. It won't let me, there it goes. Okay, and this is the really boring part and the part that most creatives have a hard time with. The paperwork. So, the bookkeeping side of it, every time that you get money, every time that you spend money, you should be keeping track of it. So when I started my second business, I didn't have a lot of work to begin with. I just did everything by spreadsheet, and that was fine. But at some point, you probably want to like sign up for QuickBooks Online or some of the other accounting software, but I mean, all the accountants know what QuickBooks is. And then the fun one, quarterly taxes. Yeah, Paul knows this one. It's so depending on how much money you're making, you have to pay quarterly taxes or even monthly taxes. So basically, the money that you should be like setting aside for payroll as for self-employment, or if you have employees and you have payroll, you actually have to pay the employer portion of that to the state, to federal, and so it's basically like an estimated tax. And if you don't pay it, a lot of times like they won't let you know, or you'll get like a letter, and then you will really know, because a lot of times like they'll have a penalty for being late too. And so I've definitely had this happen a few times where I've forgotten to pay these quarterly taxes, and then I get a letter in the mail that says I have a late penalty, and the first thing is like, for what? And I was like, oh yeah, I was supposed to be paying for that. So it's best if you have something automated, or at least put something in your calendar. Or my favorite thing is hire a payroll service that will do it for you. So I use this company called Peaswees. I can give you like the contact information if you want it. But basically they charge $6 per person per payroll. And so it's like super cheap. And then they take care of like sending the checks out, the paychecks to like all of our employees, or like the automatic deposits. Then they take care of like the quarterly taxes and the reporting, and also the W-2s. So that's a lot of stuff that I don't have to think about anymore. And actually what was funny is when I was putting this together, I was like, oh, well, I haven't paid my quarterly taxes. And I was like, wait a second, I don't do that anymore. So I was like, I had this absolute moment of like panic, and then like, oh wait, it's already covered. That's right. So yeah, definitely do like a payroll service. And then make sure that your invoicing is super clear. So we do time tracking on all of our time and materials work. So we do some work is time and materials, some work is like project based. So project based stuff is easy because like you invoice for first half, and then second half, and then or first, second, and third. So those are easy. But then when it comes to like time and materials, if you're billing at the end of the month, it's real easy for clients to forget what you did for them. And so throughout the month, as you do work for your clients, you want to like track that time and be very descriptive about what you did. And then at the end of the month, when it's time to bill them, they get a bill and they're not like, whoa, what was this for? Instead, they're like, oh yeah, they did great work for me. And this is exactly what was done this last month. And then that gets rid of like 90% of like the mad client calls. Those are the ones that you do not want. Well, now it's time to talk about money. So a lot of times when people first start off as a freelancer, they don't get the difference between revenue and the take-home pay. And this is a lot of times it's confusing even as a W-2 employee. So here's a lot of awesome numbers here for you. So just comparing between an employee, and we call them W-2s just because like that's how, that's just kind of the distinction. Freelance LLC, so we're not worrying about like a sole proprietorship here, and then a small studio with 2 employees. And so all these numbers are like approximate and very rosy. So if you make these numbers as a freelance person and as like as a small studio, you're doing pretty good. So to start off as a W-2 employee here, it's very predictable. the withholding is just automatically taken out of your paychecks. So if you have a salary of 80,000, you're paying taxes of almost 20K, and then you have a net take home of 63,000. But as a freelancer, you have more upside versus an employee. But you have to stay busy. You have to constantly get that work in the door. And so that's why I'm saying like this is kind of a rosy picture, because if you don't constantly get that work in the door, you're not going to make this much more money. So to break it down, if you were to charge $80 an hour and at 80% billable time, so out of all the time that you spend in your business, so if you're working 40 hours a week and 80% of that time you're billable, you're actually working on a project, and charging full amount, then you could be taking home you could be making $128,000 in revenue, but that's not your take home. So then you figure you got the 10% overhead, and what you want to do as an LLC, you want to split the money that you pay yourself. And so pay yourself an actual check, not a physical check, but like a payroll check. So you're actually getting like all the taxes withdrawn, and you can do benefits and everything. That's how you can get benefits easily as a small business owner, but then pay everything else as a distribution, as an owner distribution. By doing that, then you get to shave off 14%, about 14% of taxes for this amount right here. And so you're paying full taxes on this, but you're paying 14% less on this amount. And so it's a really good trick, and it's totally legal because everyone does it. That's what they all say. Everyone does it. So then you pay less taxes here than what you would have had what you would have had. So then $28,000, then you still have a take home of $82,800. But then this is where you start to scale. So if you hire 2 employees, the tips really help. And then the other way is to donate your work to a nonprofit or a charity. So it could be your church, it could be a nonprofit that's in the neighborhood, it could be like something for the university. There's so many different ways that you can give away your time, but make sure that as you're giving away your time, you're building your portfolio. And so you always hear this, like, clients that come to you like, well, this will be a great portfolio builder. Instead of like doing it to those people that are just trying to save money and rip you off, instead do it for like a nonprofit instead. So that way it's like you're actually helping the community. But then also you need to build your online presence. And so you're going to be building your portfolio and creating hopefully an awesome website that shows off like the work that you do. But you need to also build like your local SEO. And so the easiest way to do that is just Google. So Google has like Google My Business, and it's easy enough. Like once you get done with a project, just send over a link. Hey, can you leave me a quick 5-star review? And a lot of times, if it's a terrific project, they'll do that. And then people will see, they'll see that review, and then there's the proof that they're looking for. But then also social media. So just consistently posting on social media. It can even be just like, hey, I was working on a project today and I found out this new thing. And so there's a friend of mine, Nicolette, and so if she's watching this video, she's gonna be like, "What? Why is he like mentioning me?" But like I had like not even talked to her in like 20 years, but then all of a sudden she started like popping up in LinkedIn. It's like she's been like so great on LinkedIn, and it's like I didn't even know that she was in the Shopify space. I just happened to need someone that knows Shopify, and just like what she was posting, I realized like, hey, she's in this deep. She knows what she's doing. And so like I've been sending a couple of projects over her way, and I've been hearing like terrific things from the clients that I've sent over. Like, I'm so glad that you sent her over my way, And so social media really helps if you do it right. In Boise, and so I went back to school, and this time I really got an experience. So I was in student government, I was in student organizations, and I was also part of a couple like leadership groups and everything. And so I got like all sorts of referrals. And so when I first like started really doing business in Boise, like I already had like these relationships. And then over the years, being like part of Boise Graphic Design Group, which is really funny because I've never actually gotten any work from Boise Graphic Design Group, but I've worked with people, like I think 7 or 8 people now from this group. And so I've two of our employees, like they actually came from, over the years, like not now, but they actually came from Boise Graphic Design Group. And then I've done business with like, several people from the Boise Graphic Design Group and other groups as well. So, I mean, the relationships that create a lot more opportunity than marketing funnels ever will, especially early. So when you're starting off, it's those connections that make the difference. Later on, when you have like more of a machine and you're really trying to pull in like, people off of like Google and the search engines from AI, that's where the marketing funnels start making more sense. But for like a business that's looking for local relationships, that's where you're going to get business. Learn how to say no early. So this is a really hard skill, especially when it's like you're looking for work, you're trying to get bills, you're trying to pay bills, but you don't want clients that are going to be a burden. You don't want clients that are going to take extra work. So a lot of times work will come in and it's not quite the right fit. It could be either it's not completely what you do, you're not comfortable with it, or you kind of get like a bad feeling about working with this person. And so in that case, you can say that you're over capacity. You can raise your rates. So I don't usually do that, but sometimes there'll be a client that comes to us and I talk with them and it's like, oh, this is going to be a lot more work. And so then I raise the rates naturally, because I know it's just going to take more of an effort. And so sometimes those people will go away and sometimes they actually turn into amazing clients. And then refer out, because over the years, we've definitely defined like what we like to do and what we don't like to do. So I always am really careful. If I have a client that's obviously just a prospective client that's obviously not a good client, I will not refer them out because you do not want to pass along a bad penny to someone else. Yeah, and that gets really uncomfortable saying no, but you absolutely have to do it. So as you get bigger, you need to start like your own, you need to like create a system. So systems beat talent. When you are young, you can rely on talent and work, and you can burn like the midnight oil. That's totally fine. But then when you have like a family and other responsibilities, then you need to learn how to work smarter. And so that's where habits are better than hustle. Create checklists, launch procedures, define workflows, and have clear handoffs. And so some of the projects that we're working on right now, it's a very defined project. And we were having a little bit of issues with like keeping everything within budget. And so that's where we started actually doing like really clear handoffs. And so rather than just kind of working through the whole project, we introduced 4 new milestones where the client had to like check things off and say, yeah, I'm totally cool with this design, with this homepage, with this site architecture. And so that made like the total difference. And all of a sudden, like all the projects for this particular client are like they're totally like locked in now, and they're feeling like they're more part of the project too. So I mean, it's really worked out nicely. But at the end of the day, remember, when you have your own business, the buck stops here. So your name is on it. Whatever goes out the door, it has to be perfect. So clients, they don't see all the craziness and everything that goes on with building the project. I mean, it can be like total chaos. But at the end of the day, if that end product is just polished and like perfect, then they're going to love it and they're going to be happy. So your reputation actually becomes your most valuable asset. So let's talk a little bit more about community. So one of the fastest ways to build real relationships is to support your community. So a couple of things with working with nonprofits. So pick the nonprofit that you want to work with a little bit more strategically. So is it someone that you want to put in your portfolio that you're going to be proud of? Is it going to make a difference? So back when I used to be, back when I was a student at Boise State, I was the president of the AITP, which is Association of IT Professionals. And so at Boise State, they want you to do like a volunteer project every semester. And so other people in our group, they want to do the common thing, which is rake up Boise. So you just run around with rakes and you just rake up leaves, you know? And it's just like, we're IT professionals. Why don't we do something that only we can do? You know, so what we did instead is we started up a computer repair fair. And for a full day, we just fixed everyone's computer that signed up. And so from 7 in the morning till 1 o'clock in the morning, the next morning, we just fixed people's computers. And we had like, the first year that we did this, we had like people holding their computers, standing in line, like all the way down the hallway. So we got smarter the second year. We had like scheduled times for people to come in. But that first year, it was like mayhem. But it was so much fun, and everybody loved it. And so it actually got its own little fanfare. So every semester, people would be asking like our professors, "When is that computer repair fair? I got so many things on my computer." That has other stories too, because some of the stuff we found on those computers was, yeah.
NDAs.
Yeah. So we would just kind of look the other way like, I think it's time to get a new hard drive. But anyway, the reason I bring that up is because like everyone here has like, you know, advanced skills. So, you know, choose something that you can provide that really gives back that they can't get somewhere else, you know. So then also as you give value, you're building those relationships. And so one thing to keep in mind, like when you're working with nonprofits, like who else are they working with? They're working with donors. And so if they're talking to a donor, like, oh, I really like enjoyed working with Mike. And then all of a sudden, Mike's getting a call from this donor that's got like really deep pockets. So it's not a bad thing, but it's also great to like, you know, be helping the community, and then show up consistently. So you don't have to like actively be involved in a bunch of different organizations, but you know, just showing up and getting to know the people in your community, and you know, it's so great because you get to learn from them. Like even myself was like, I've been doing this forever, but it's like, I learn stuff from you guys like all the time. And I feel like there's always something else, especially like now that AI is like here and everything's changing. It just seems like there's so much more stuff to learn. So BGDG, we're great. So is BAF. There's other industry groups like, you know, Boise Young Professionals. But the main thing is join these, have fun. And then lessons learned. So communication is everything. So communication lands the business. It reduces the revisions. Like as you work on a project, you know, instead of having like, you know, maybe 2 rounds of revisions, it'll get it so you can nail it in one. But most importantly, you're setting the expectations. So if you set those expectations very clearly up front, you have less scope creep. You have less surprises when it comes to like, you know, pay the bill, and everything is just that much easier. So talent is expected, communication is differentiating. And I'm going to be sharing like this PowerPoint like after the fact. And so I try to leave credits for each of these images, but I didn't quite get it on all of them. And then this is probably like the biggest mistake I made. Working with a client. So this was like up in Seattle, and we had this terrific project. And so this guy came to me and he was like, I have a real estate business, and I'm looking for someone that can build an MLS for me. And I was like, well, what's that? You know? And so we got into it. I was like, yeah, I could build that. And build it I did. And this was just when I was like a freelancer. And so I built this amazing system that grabbed all just the multifamily listings from the Northwest MLS, from the Commercial Brokerage Association. This is all in the Seattle area, and then like our own custom MLS, and put it all together and just showed it as like, one listing service. And so we got like subscription, it was a subscription model, so people signed up on it. But then also this guy was a real estate agent. And so he was, he basically, he almost doubled like his sales. And so as we were doing all this, I mean, as you can imagine, this was a lot of work. So this was completely custom. I was doing the design, the development, some of the marketing, and I was getting like weekly paychecks, and everything was good for like the first 2 months. And then one of the paychecks was a little bit late. It's like, oh, I'll get you next week. And so then the next week I'd get one check, but I wouldn't get the second check. And so another like 6 months goes on, and he's just kind of stringing me along. He seemed like a really, really nice guy. And so I felt like, oh, well, he'll get caught up with me. We just needs to like get a couple more, he needs to get a couple more, sales under his belt. It wasn't happening. And so what finally like did it for me is, so he owed me about, at this point, probably about $40,000. And then he turned around and found this other marketing agency. They asked for $30,000 up front to even work with them, and he just paid it. And I was like, well, wait a second. You owe me 40. I was like, it's time to stop. And so that's where I learned, looking back on it, it's like, I should have stopped a lot sooner than that. And so hope is not a billing strategy. So I kept on hoping that, we'd build this up huge, and there'd be like a big payout, or at least I'd get, paid what I, had worked for. So end of the day, what I had to do is I actually had to sue him. And I ended up getting like 80% of the money, and I just gave him the rest as a Christmas present, just to like get him out of my hair. Specialize intentionally. So this is something that like I'm trying to work on right now. So if you think of like a sports team, so I'm showing racquetball or pickleball paddles here, but let's say like if you're a coach for like a pickleball team, are you more likely to work with like a general website builder, or would you rather work with someone that just builds like websites for sports teams? And so when you specialize, not only do you get the benefit of like working in the same industry and getting like really good at it, so that your cost goes down and like your quality goes up, but you also get to charge more because there's that perceived value of it, being worth more. And so that's a good direction to definitely go in, and set expectations early, and then the second part of that is you got to deliver consistently. So over time, that trust compounds. Success is more about reputation than it is about making money. But the money will follow if you have the reputation. So what's next? Put a plan together. You don't need a perfect plan. Just get a plan together. Learn. So Idaho Small Business Development Center, they're just over here at Boise State, and they're totally free. So if you don't know what you're doing and you're like, well, I have this thought, can you help me out? They'll sit down with you and actually walk through everything. And their people are like really good. There's online courses, there's YouTube, but just be a little bit careful with this, because you can get into like learning paralysis, where it's just like, I gotta learn more. It's like, you don't have to be completely perfect. You can learn on the job too. And take the plunge. At some point, you just gotta like just jump into the deep waters. So in closing, it's not easy. It requires some serious discipline and responsibility, but it's absolutely worth it. So this is my sixth business, and I'm still learning stuff. But I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything, because it's just like, once you get the entrepreneurial bug and start your own business, it's really hard to turn around and go back. So that's it. Thank you. And if anyone has any questions, let me know.